Josephine Calloway had spent 2 years since her father's death, proving to every man in Dodge City that she didn't need a husband standing behind the bar to keep the Calloway house running. She wasn't looking to prove anything different the October night a drifter named Wade Kessler walked through her door, asking only for a room and whatever was still warm in the kitchen. She fed him. She rented him the room upstairs. She told herself that was the whole of it. From across the street, watching through the frosted window of his own office, Silas Rourke watched the stranger go inside and settle at a table like he intended to stay a while. And something in the set of Rourke's jaw suggested he didn't much care for the sight of it. Neither Josephine nor Wade knew that yet. They only knew, each in their own careful way, that something about this particular evening felt different from every other night the bell over that door had rung. The bell rang just past 9, late enough that Josephine nearly didn't look up from the ledger she'd been squinting over. The stranger filling her doorway was tall enough to duck under the frame, trail dust still on his coat, a gun belt worn low in the unhurried way of a man who'd stopped thinking about it years back. His eyes found hers and held a beat longer than politeness strictly required. "Room, if you've got one," he said. "And whatever's still warm in that kitchen." "Both, for the right price." She closed the ledger. "Whiskey, too, if you've got the coin for it." "Coffee's fine." She raised an eyebrow. "That's a strange order for a man who looks like he's spent a month on the trail." "Whiskey makes a man slow to notice things," Wade said. "I've got a habit of noticing things." Josephine filed that away, the same careful cataloging she gave every stranger who walked through her door. "Josephine Calloway, this is my place." She said it plainly, half expecting the usual flicker of surprise. Wade only nodded, unbothered, like a woman owning a Dodge City Tavern was the most ordinary fact in the world. "Wade Kessler," he said, setting coin on the bar. "You always interrogate a man's drink order, Miss Calloway, or am I getting special treatment?" "Only the ones who look like trouble," she said, and turned toward the kitchen before he could see her almost smile. She brought him stew and bread, and found herself lingering at his table longer than service required, telling herself it was slow business, and not the particular way he thanked her for each plate. "Passing through?" she asked. "Trying to," Wade said. "Kansas wasn't the plan. Neither was stopping past a night." "Where's the plan taking you?" "Hadn't settled that yet." Most men who came through talked like they had the whole future mapped and paid for. Wade talked like a man still deciding what was worth chasing, and something in the honesty of it caught her off guard enough that she stayed another minute longer than she meant to. She noticed the calluses on his hands, the scar along his jaw that hadn't fully faded, the way his gaze moved once, thorough and unhurried, over every door and window in the room, cataloging exits without making a show of it. Years later, Josephine would still remember exactly how long that bowl of stew sat cooling between them, while she found reasons not to walk away. "You always watch a room like you're planning to rob it?" she asked finally. "Only when I'm deciding whether I trust the company," Wade said. "Jury's still out." "On the room or the company?" He looked at her a beat too long before answering. "Company's looking better by the minute." The bell rang again an hour later, and Josephine's posture changed before the door had fully opened. Silas Rourke came in with 2 hired men trailing him, a cattle baron who'd built half his fortune buying land cheap from ranchers he'd first squeezed dry, and who'd set his sights on the Calloway house the day the railroad survey marked the lot behind it as prime ground for the depot's planned expansion. "Evening, Miss Calloway." Rourke settled uninvited at the bar. "There's a well on that back lot my hotel plans require. I'll make my offer generous, one last time." "My answer's the same as when you made the offer to my father," Josephine said. "He wouldn't sell you that well 20 years back, and I won't either." Something flickered across Rourke's face at that, old resentment surfacing. "Your father was a stubborn man." I take after him. Rourke's gaze slid toward Wade's table. New help or new company? Neither one's your business, Josephine said. Wade hadn't moved, but something in his stillness had sharpened, the quiet alertness of a man deciding whether a situation required him. Rourke clocked it, waited, and rose with mocking politeness. Offers don't stay generous forever, Miss Calloway. Once the door swung shut, Wade finally spoke. Friend of yours? Man who's wanted this land since before I was old enough to pour a whiskey, Josephine said. This well is the one piece he's never managed to take. He built this place with his own 2 hands, Josephine said later, once the tavern had emptied, and it was just the 2 of them and the low fire. Every board in that back room, he cut himself. He's buried up on the hill now, where you can still see the roof line from the grave if the weather's clear. You visit him? Sundays, mostly. She turned her coffee cup in her hands. He used to say a tavern that only served drink was wasting good land. Wanted to build rooms enough for families passing through, not just men looking to drink their wages. Never got the chance before he passed. You could still do it. Rourke's making that harder every year, Josephine said. Man wants the well behind my kitchen for his own hotel plans. My father refused him the same offer 2 decades back, and Rourke's held the grudge since. Wade studied her across the firelight, something in his expression shifting from simple interest into something steadier. Most folks would have sold by now, taken the easy money and started fresh somewhere quieter. I'm not most folks. No, Wade said. I'm starting to see that. She caught herself smiling at the plainness of it, and made herself look back at the fire before he noticed how long she'd been holding his gaze. Tell me something about him, Wade said. Your father. Josephine considered that a moment, turning her cup slowly. He made terrible coffee, burned it near every morning, swore every time he did it, and never once learned to fix it. My mother used to say she married a man who could build anything except a decent pot of coffee. What happened to her? Fever when I was 9. It was just the 2 of us after that, him and me, running this place together before I was old enough to see over the bar. She smiled faintly at the memory. He taught me the ledger the same winter he taught me to shoot a rifle straight. Said a woman running a business alone needed both skills equally. Sounds like he raised you to need exactly nobody, Wade said. He raised me to be able to stand alone, Josephine corrected. That's not quite the same thing as wanting to. Wade was quiet a moment at that, something working behind his eyes. No, he agreed finally. I don't suppose it is. She led him up the narrow staircase with a lamp in hand later that evening, aware of him behind her in a way that had nothing to do with caution. This one's yours. She opened the door at the end of the hall. Wade stopped close enough that she had to tip her head back to hold his gaze. Can I ask you something personal, Miss Calloway? Depends what it is. Why hasn't a woman like you married again? 2 years alone running a place this size. I'd have expected half the county lined up at your door. They lined up, Josephine admitted. Every one of them wanted a wife who'd hand the ledger over the day she said her vows. I buried a father who trusted me to run this place exactly as I saw fit. I'm not handing that trust to a man who'd take it from me the moment he had a ring on my finger. That's a fair thing to protect, Wade said quietly. What about you? Man your age, drifting alone, no destination picked out? Something crossed his face, quick and guarded. Different reasons, not ones I'm ready to lay out on a first evening. Fair's fair then, Josephine said, though she found herself wanting the rest of that answer more than she expected to. Good night, Mr. Kessler. She made herself walk away before either of them said something neither was ready for yet. She hadn't gone 20 steps down the stairs before the front door burst open hard enough to rattle the windows. Rourke's men again, dragging the frame of her porch railing across the barroom floor, tossing it down like a warning nobody could mistake for accidental. "Mr. Rourke says think it over careful," one of them said. "Accidents happen easy to a place run by a woman alone." "Tell Mr. Rourke," Josephine said, stepping forward before Wade could move, her voice hard and level, "that I've already written to the county land office about that well's original survey markers. Tell him I'd hate for that letter to reach the sheriff before he's had time to reconsider tonight's little visit." The men exchanged an uncertain glance. Whatever they'd expected, a landlady threatening them with paperwork wasn't it. Wade stepped up beside her now, quiet and steady. "Lady's made herself plain." The men left without further argument, though the threat hung heavy in the air behind them. Josephine stood over the wreckage of her own railing, hands shaking now that the moment had passed, and found Wade's hand steady on her shoulder. "You didn't need me to say a word," he said. "You handled that yourself." "Doesn't mean I'm not glad you were standing there," Josephine admitted. Wade insisted on keeping watch from the porch that night anyway, rifle across his knees, unwilling to leave the place unguarded. Josephine found herself standing in the doorway near midnight, unable to settle. "You'll freeze out there." "Slept in worse." "That's not an answer." She wrapped her arms against the cold. "Don't stay out there, Wade. Come keep me warm." He rose slowly, setting the rifle aside. "You sure about that?" "By the fire," she said, opening the door wider. "Don't let it go to your head." "Too late for that, Miss Calloway." It was the first time she'd seen him smile properly, and something in her chest gave way at the sight of it. They sat by the hearth a long while, coffee going cold between them, talking about nothing important until the talking slowed and Wade leaned in and kissed her, brief enough to feel like a question. Josephine didn't pull away, but when the kiss ended, she found herself needing a breath, needing a beat to understand what she was ready for and what she wasn't yet. Wade seemed to understand it before she said a word. "I'll take the chair by the door tonight," he said quietly. "No need to rush anything, Josephine." She was grateful for that, more than she let herself say aloud. It was 3 days later, over breakfast, that Josephine finally asked the question she'd been holding back since the night he arrived. "You watch every door and window in a room like a man running from something," she said. "I've let you sleep under my roof and stand between me and Rourke's men. I'd like to know a little more about who I've let in." Wade set down his fork and reached into his saddlebag, producing a worn letter, edges soft from handling. "Recommendation from the Lazy M outfit, down near San Angelo. Worked their fence line and cattle drives 4 years running before I left." Josephine read it carefully. The signature belonged to a rancher name she recognized, a man whose cattle had come through the Dodge City stockyards more than once. "I know a drover who worked a season for the Lazy M," she said. "I'll ask him if the name checks out next time he's through." "Fair enough," Wade said, unbothered. "I'd rather you trust me because you checked than because you didn't think to." She sent word with the next drover through town, and the answer came back within the week, confirming every word of it. It didn't erase every question she still had about him, but it settled something in her chest regardless, the particular relief of trust earned rather than simply given. The weeks that followed settled into something neither of them had planned, but both leaned into anyway. Wade started helping behind the bar in exchange for his room, though his first week behind it produced more confusion than competence. "Whiskey?" he asked a regular customer. "Coffee," the man said, unimpressed. Wade glanced at Josephine. "Your establishment attracts dangerous men." "Wait till he orders milk," she said, not looking up from the ledger. She taught him to keep the books properly, too, patient through his early mistakes, laughing outright the evening he tallied a week's whiskey sales twice and nearly convinced her the tavern had gone bankrupt overnight. He repaired the broken porch railing without being asked, though the result leaned a full 2 inches off true. "It's crooked," Josephine observed. "It's sturdy." "A mule's sturdy too. Doesn't mean I'd put one on my porch." He laughed at that, easy and unguarded, and Josephine found herself laughing along with him more often than she'd laughed in the 2 years since her father died. One evening, a pie came out of the oven burnt black on top, and rather than throw it out, the two of them ate it anyway by the fire, scraping around the ruined crust and agreeing it was, against all odds, still better than trail rations. Old Martha Bell, who came in most mornings for coffee and gossip, watched the two of them across the room one such evening and remarked to no one in particular that she'd give it until spring before somebody finally said something true out loud. There were other small collisions, too. Wade tried his hand at cooking one Sunday when Josephine's wrist was too swollen from a fall off the ladder to manage the stove herself, and produced biscuits hard enough that young Eli, delivering firewood that morning, asked with perfect childish honesty whether Mr. Kessler had meant to build a new porch step instead of breakfast. Josephine laughed until she had to sit down, and Wade, entirely unbothered by his own failure, fed the ruined biscuits to the chickens and declared himself better suited to fence repair than kitchen work. "You're better at most things than you give yourself credit for," Josephine told him once, watching him mend a hinge he'd noticed sagging without being asked. "I'm better at fixing what's broken," Wade said. "Never had much practice at building something from nothing." "Neither had I once," Josephine said. "This place taught me. Might teach you too if you let it." He didn't answer that directly, but she noticed he came back to help with the evening rush more often after that. Not because his room and board required it anymore, but because, she suspected, he'd started to want the noise and the company as much as she did. By late November, Wade finally told her the piece of himself he'd kept folded away since October. "I worked protection for a cattle outfit in Texas," he said. "Good money at first. Then the owner started using men like me to push smaller ranchers off land he wanted cheap. I quit the day he ordered me to burn a family's barn to make his point clear enough." "Why'd it take you that long to quit?" "Because I told myself the money mattered more than what I was doing to earn it," Wade admitted, something raw in his voice. "I'm not proud of how long I let that go on before I finally walked." Josephine studied him, weighing the plain shame in his voice against the steady, careful man she'd come to know these past weeks. "That's not nothing, Wade. Recognizing it, even late, that's not nothing." "There's more to it," Wade said, quieter now. "My old boss wrote me a letter 2 weeks back. Somebody in Cedarville told him where I'd settled. I haven't opened it yet." "Why not?" "Because I know what it's probably offering," Wade said. "And I don't trust myself yet to know I'd say no to it clean." Josephine didn't press him further that night, but the unopened letter sat between them regardless, an unresolved question neither of them was ready to answer yet. It was mid-December before either of them was ready for more than the fire and a held hand. The choice, when it came, wasn't sudden or unplanned. It came after weeks of shared suppers and burnt pie and a crooked porch railing neither of them had any real reason to fix. Weeks of Wade learning her father's ledger system, and Josephine learning the particular quiet way he took his coffee and the low, unhurried sound of his laugh when something genuinely amused him. "I'm not asking you for anything you're not ready to give," Wade said one evening, the tavern closed and quiet around them. "I know that," Josephine said. "That's part of why I'm ready now." What passed between them that night wasn't rushed, and wasn't the desperate collision of two strangers escaping a threat together. It was two people who'd spent 2 months choosing each other in small, deliberate ways, finally choosing something larger. The lamp in the front window burned low and steady until well past midnight, and neither of them woke before dawn regretting a single part of it. Josephine woke first, the gray light of December morning barely through the curtains, and found herself smiling at the warmth of him beside her, before the smile faded into something more uncertain. she rose quietly and went downstairs to start the morning fire, and stopped short in the hallway at the sight of Wade's saddle sitting by the front door, cinched and packed like a man readying to ride out at first light. She stood there a long moment, unsure whether he meant to leave that morning or simply hadn't learned yet how a man was supposed to stay somewhere without keeping half his gear ready for departure. Wade found her there minutes later and followed her gaze to the saddle. "That's habit," he said quietly, "not intention. Old habit from a life where staying too long got a man complacent, and complacent got men hurt." "Which is it this morning?" Josephine asked, careful to keep her voice steady. Wade didn't answer right away, and the silence sat heavier between them than either of them wanted it to. "I've never stayed anywhere long enough to unpack proper," he finally said. "Never trusted a place enough to believe it'd still want me around come spring. That saddle's habit built over 10 years of leaving before anybody had the chance to ask me to." "Are you leaving?" Josephine asked again, quieter this time. "I don't know yet," Wade admitted, and the honesty of it, raw and unrehearsed, cost her more than an easy reassurance would have. "I know I don't want to. I don't know if wanting's ever been enough to keep me anywhere before." Josephine studied him a long moment, weighing her own fear against the plain, difficult truth he'd just handed her. "Then don't decide today," she said finally. "Unpack that saddle when you're ready to, Wade, not before. I'd rather you stay because you're certain than because I asked you to prove something you're not sure of yet." She left him standing in the hallway with his own uncertainty and went to start the morning fire, her hands steadier than her heart. Rourke came himself 2 days later, no longer bothering with polite offers, flanked by 4 hired men. But Josephine was ready this time. She'd already sent Eli, the boy who delivered her firewood, running for the sheriff the moment she'd spotted Rourke's men gathering at the edge of town. And she'd already gathered the original survey document proving the well had been excluded from any prior land sale, tucked safely inside her apron pocket. "Tavern's not for sale, Rourke," she said, meeting him on the porch herself, Wade a step behind her rather than in front. "Wasn't 20 years ago when you asked my father. Isn't now." "You're a woman alone making decisions beyond your understanding," Rourke said. "I've got a signed survey document proving that well's excluded from any land claim you could make," Josephine said. "And Sheriff Watkins is riding up that road right now on account of a message I sent the moment your men gathered outside town. I'd think carefully, Silas, about what happens to your other business dealings once a sheriff starts asking why you keep threatening a widow's tavern." Rourke's confidence faltered, weighing the approaching hoofbeats against his own calculations. "This isn't finished." "It is tonight," Josephine said, and didn't move from the porch until his men had ridden well clear of town. The following week's town council session gave Josephine the chance to make Rourke's pattern public, but it nearly fell apart before it began. Mr. Pritchard, the dry goods merchant Rourke had leaned on hardest over the years, refused at first to testify, too afraid of the debt he still owed Rourke's bank to risk open confrontation. "He'll call in my loan the moment I speak against him," Pritchard said, hands shaking as he refused Josephine's request outside the council hall. "He's been calling in favors and fear for 20 years, Mr. Pritchard," Josephine said. "I watched my father refuse him once and pay for it in a dozen small ways over the following decade. I'm not asking you to be brave for my sake. I'm asking because every year we all stay quiet, he gets a little more certain nobody in this town will ever say no to him properly." Pritchard stood silent a long moment, and then, to Josephine's genuine surprise, nodded once, sharp and final. Together with 2 other merchants Rourke had pressured over the years, they laid the pattern out before the council in plain, unembellished detail. Rourke tried denial, then bluster, and found neither held against 4 separate, consistent accounts. The council issued formal censure and opened his other dealings to scrutiny he hadn't anticipated. Pritchard found Josephine afterward, outside the council hall, still visibly shaken by his own nerve. 20 years I've been paying that man's price for my own silence," he admitted. Feels strange, not owing it to him anymore. Feels strange to me too, Josephine said. 20 years my father paid a version of that same price. Guess we're both a little late learning we didn't have to. Your father would have been proud of you tonight, Miss Calloway. He'd have been prouder of you, Mr. Pritchard, Josephine said. He always did like watching a frightened man find his spine. Pritchard laughed at that, surprised into it, and shook her hand with more warmth than he'd ever offered her across his own counter in 20 years of buying flour and coffee from him. That same week, Wade finally opened the letter from Texas, sitting alone at the kitchen table long after Josephine had gone up to bed. It was, as he'd suspected, an offer. Foreman's wages at a new outfit forming near Amarillo, more money than he'd ever been paid honestly in his life. He sat with it a long while, turning the letter over, weighing an old familiar pull toward easy movement against something newer and far less familiar. Josephine found him there near midnight, the letter still in his hands. "You're leaving," she said, not a question. "I haven't decided," Wade admitted. "I've spent most of my life not staying anywhere long enough to find out if I could. I don't rightly know how to trust myself to do it now." "That saddle by the door," Josephine said. "That letter you couldn't open for 2 weeks. I've been watching you get ready to leave since the morning after we first stayed together, Wade. I understand why. I don't hold it against you. But I won't spend the rest of this winter pretending I haven't noticed." "I'm not trying to hurt you," Wade said, something raw breaking through his usual careful calm. "I just don't know how a man like me learns to stay put. Every job I ever left, every town I ever rode out of, I told myself it was because staying meant somebody eventually needed something from me I couldn't give. Money, loyalty, a version of myself I didn't trust I could keep being." Josephine sat across from him, steadying her own voice before she spoke. "I've spent 2 years telling myself I didn't need anybody standing beside me. I'm telling you plainly now, because I'd rather say it and risk you leaving anyway than never say it at all. I want you to stay, Wade. Not because Rourke's still a threat, not because I need protecting, because I've gotten used to 2 cups on that counter instead of 1. Wade set the letter down slowly. "That's the first time in a long while somebody's asked me to stay just because they wanted me there. Not because they needed something from me." "Is that enough?" Josephine asked. "It's more than enough," Wade said, and burned the letter in the kitchen stove without another word of explanation needed between them. Spring came slow and green over Dodge City, and with it came the new sign Wade hung above the Calloway house door, painted in Josephine's own careful hand. Calloway House, Tavern and Inn. The porch railing stayed crooked. Josephine never let him fix it properly. Not out of practicality, but because she'd grown fond of the particular imperfect proof of the man who'd built it with more care than skill that first autumn. The whole town turned out for the small gathering marking the inn's official opening that April. Martha Bell holding court over the good coffee, Eli underfoot with a plate of biscuits, Mr. Pritchard raising a genuinely warm toast to Josephine's father's memory. Rourke, stripped of 2 of his other business ventures after the council's scrutiny, kept his distance entirely, and nobody in Dodge City missed him. Martha cornered Josephine near the punch bowl at one point, watching Wade across the room struggling to hang a string of paper lanterns without setting the porch alight. "Told you I'd give it till spring," she said, not without satisfaction. "You did," Josephine admitted. "Man's terrible with lanterns," Martha observed. "He's better with people," Josephine said. "I've decided that matters more." "Your father would have liked him," Martha said, softer now. "Liked that he never once tried to run this place for you. Just alongside you." Josephine watched Wade finally get the lanterns hung crooked, but lit, laughing at his own effort, loud enough that half the gathered town turned to look, and found she agreed with every word of it. Late that evening, once the last guest had gone home, Wade pulled Josephine into an unsteady, laughing dance across the empty barroom floor, neither of them particularly skilled at it, both of them not caring in the slightest. When Josephine finally went to close up for the night, she found Wade already waiting on the porch, not with a rifle across his knees this time, but with 2 cups of coffee, steam rising into the cool spring air. "Figured you'd want company," he said, "not protection this time." She sat down beside him at the crooked railing he'd built with his own 2 careful hands, and found she wanted exactly that, and nothing more urgent besides. Josephine spent 2 years proving she could close the tavern alone every night, and she still could. The difference that spring was that when the last chair went up onto the table, there was somebody else beside her blowing out the lamps. She'd learned, slower than she expected, that letting someone carry part of the weight had never once made her any less capable of carrying it herself. If Josephine and Wade's slow-built romance won you over, hit like and comment. She never needed saving, just someone worth choosing every day. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next Old West story, because every week a new journey of courage, romance, and redemption is waiting for you. Turn on notifications so you're the first to watch. If this story lit something in you, I hope it's this. The right kind of love doesn't rush past who a person already is. It waits, learns the crooked places, and stays anyway. Thanks for spending this one with me, all the way from that cold October doorway to a crooked porch railing in a Dodge City spring. I'll see you in the next one.